Well, I thought today we would talk a little bit about presentations, and I thought we would go after a couple of different concepts simultaneously. And I'm by no means an expert on either one of these concepts that I want to talk about, but I thought that's the beauty of a study group, that we can all talk about these. I work at Walden University. It's an online university, and one of the programs that I supervise is the Adolescent Literacy and Technology program. And so we get a lot of teachers that are all working secondary schools, 6 through 12 basically, though I'm getting more and more elementary teachers in it, which I find interesting, even though it says adolescent literacy. And of course, the go-to tool is when we say, all right, let's bring technology into our classroom. It says, oh, okay, great. I'll have the students read this, do this experiment, and then they'll make a PowerPoint. And I have nothing against PowerPoint whatsoever. I like PowerPoint. I use it all the time. But there are alternatives. And of course, from my years teaching, I taught for 20-plus years, mostly in middle schools. I learned really quickly. If you have 30 kids in a classroom, make a PowerPoint, and then you have to watch 30 PowerPoints in a row. And of course, if you're an 8th grader, and it doesn't matter what you say, if you're an 8th grader, what you do is you put as much text as you possibly can onto the slide. Not into the notes, not on the note cards, not onto a handout that you can have in front of you or use the presentation format. What you do is you put them on the screen. And then you do your presentation like this.
Yes.
Standing mostly in front of it, so that you say, each day we will be organized with the 2020, so your back's to the audience. And so there's a lot of presentation skill that kids in schools probably don't have, that maybe they could have, and we can often do that simultaneously. And then I thought maybe a little later on we could talk about some alternatives to the stand up in front and talk like I'm doing right now. And but then we'll break out and go to some other formats as well. And then just explore some of the other tools. Patty Anders yesterday. Patty Anders yesterday. Oh, I see what this is. I'm not a Mac person. Sorry, folks.
We can fix that.
I probably
It's a curable
come over to the north.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just that learning curve of learning all the new software, but I think I prefer the Macs. Went ahead and demonstrated this tool for you, and I thought she did rather well with this particular presentation that she did. And if you see what she has done here, she and her, I think, grad students actually helped her with this presentation. All of the content is in this tree, so you can zoom in and out on different parts of it. There we go. Embed YouTube videos and all of that kind of stuff, and it's all right there for you. And all you have to do is zoom in and out. And you can also set a path. The nice thing about Prezi is you're working on a big canvas. You don't have to do linear presentations, slide 1, slide 2, slide 3. And of course you can hyperlink PowerPoint, of course, but you don't have to keep it all linear. You can move all around. You set up a pathway, and you can't see the pathway on the Prezi, but when you set up the Prezi, you go ahead and you tell it where you want it to go, and it will just take you around from area to area. It has a presentation mode that we'll take a look at a bit later on. I don't know where that went. This is Patty's presentation, okay? So you can just get an idea of what the tool does. It takes a little bit of fooling around with to get used to it, but it's really fairly intuitive. And the first couple of ones that you make, you just kind of realize that you will get better at it. So I thought maybe, what's that?
It's like Google Earth if you've done that before.
Oh, yes, it is.
Prezi's easier after that.
Yeah, it's exactly like the Google Earth if you want to zoom in on an address or whatever in that kind of a direction. So I thought we would talk today a little bit about presentation design as well, because in order to design a Prezi to not make people sick, it also helps to have some design principles that help you know, what am I going to do with a Prezi or virtually any other presentation as well. I am slowly getting away from text on my screen when I'm doing presentations. I'm not very good at it because I'm a literacy person. I was an English teacher for 20 years, so I just love to have my words and my sentences. But slowly with my presentations, I'm doing less and less with words on the screen and more with images and video. And one of the reasons for that is, when I'm presenting, I want you paying attention to my words while I'm talking. And what's on the screen, if it's text, divides people's attention. Do you ever give a handout for a PowerPoint presentation to your grad students, your undergrad students? What are they doing?
Reading their notes.
They're reading their notes, and they're not really listening to you. Or they're busy copying it down just like mad. Anything you say that's not on the handout, of course, for you. I stopped giving handouts years ago. I just put the presentations on my Blackboard or college site, and if they're going to do that, they're going to do that. But more and more now, I just put the images there, and if they want to get the content, they've got to listen to me when I'm presenting. And of course, we talk about things like flipped classrooms and so forth that can enhance that, make it knowledge on demand, knowledge anytime kind of a format if you want to do those kinds of things with it. One of the ideas that I got kind of hooked on recently by my friend Nancy Fry, that many of you probably know as well, and she's a master at this, and I'm stealing everything I know about it from her. The idea of Presentation Zen, and there's an entire website dedicated to this, and it's linked on the Cool Tools website down here. There it is. That you can take a look at any time that you want to, talking about how you design presentations that are going to capture people's interest, capture their attention, and direct their attention where you want it. 3 of their principles are simplicity, restraint, and naturalness. And I wanted to talk a little bit about simplicity and restraint while we demonstrate a couple of the Prezis and the Prezi features for you today. So let's see, did my presentation come up? It did. I started designing one for you and then thought we could add some additional content, and with the technical problems that we had this morning, it's not probably quite as good as I would like, but that's kind of the way it goes. So here's a presentation that I started designing, and then we can add to it. I like images. This, by the way, is a school building that was designed in the 15th, 16th century. It's just outside of Agra, India, where the Taj Mahal is. Have you seen this?
Yes.
This is the abandoned city. Yeah. And it was really fascinating for its time because it was a school for girls in the northern part of India, where education was mainly for males, of course, at that time. But they had designed this one for girls. The prince who designed this entire city put this all together in this direction. And what he had was a simplicity of design here. He needed to take advantage of prevailing breezes so that people could feel comfortable inside, and not, because in northern India it's going to be hot, and not and still be able to be focused on the learning that was going on in the classroom situation. And this is what the design ended up being for them. So the idea of simplicity of design, and I think this is an example of that idea in architecture that we can take into presentations as well. With Prezi, you see, you talked about not wanting to overdo the movement so that people looking around start getting seasick. If you keep it short and small, or short rotations and not long pathways, you can pretty much keep people from not getting the motion sickness that some Prezis that you may have seen will cause. This is just another school building. I wanted to show you how to put some images in. This one's from a 21st century school, and then I thought I would show you this one. This is an example of what not to do. Now, if you saw this on a screen, what would you start doing?
Reading.
You'd start reading. Or, if the type is tiny enough, which on a presentation it very often is, you get out your opera glasses and start taking a look and seeing if you can read that, and you're no longer paying attention to whatever the presenter is trying to say or tell you on that. So when we talk about designing a presentation of any kind, we think about how do we design it? How do we direct people's attention to the place where we want that attention to be, and what tool is the most appropriate for that? So sometimes it's going to be PowerPoint, sometimes it's going to be Prezi. What tool will lend itself to the type of learning that you want to go on, and then what should go into that? Does it need to be images? Does it need to be text? Does it need to be bullet points? Are there ways to embed video, like the YouTube that you saw in Patty's presentation, and so forth? On the map, I'm not sure. There we go. Okay. So I thought those would be the three main points to talk about as far as designing a presentation. What do you want to put all together in that? The Prezi tool itself is fairly easy to use while this loads up.
And once again, if you want like more hands-on help at trying Prezi, during lunch at the Cyber Cafe, we'll be running the like more hands-on how-to tutorial if you want to come down.
This works, I believe it's Flash-based.
Yes.
So I think it will probably be a little bit problematic if you're using the Apple iPads, but otherwise anything with a Flash player will play this. Doing it is really easy. They call this thing in the middle, this round circle bit, a zebra, and this is your control feature. Everything is right here when you get into edit mode. Oops, go away. Go away. Inserting material here, you can insert shapes, images, items for YouTube, insert a file. Is there a picture folder on your computer?
Yeah, it's just pictures.
Okay. Anything in there is fine?
Yeah.
Oh, could
This
sit
looks
on
like
my
we're going to put a
computer.
picture right up there.
Never know. Sure, this is appropriate, right?
Well, that's why I think
question.
What are we going to
No.
share?
I was working in the valley for a while.
may not be inappropriate, but
I
it
just
could
was
be.
thinking about that. Oh my God, that could be.
Yeah, no. Hold on, well, it's loading.
The vacation pictures with the Mai Tai in this hand and the beer in that hand.
Yeah, here goes your life.
Here's Greg with you.
There it is, now it's on YouTube.
Here's Greg.
Prezi
with
porn.
the shower.
Oh, there you go.
Prezi porn.
Yeah. A little alliteration going in
Okay,
there.
one
Oh, that processes that.
industry decision.
I think it's force you to do less stuff.
It's still loading, that's all right. But that's really all there is to it, yeah.
So if you want to upload a presentation to your course website, then do you use Gene then to record your presentation to upload it, whereas with the PowerPoint Keynote you can voice over?
Actually, that's a good question. This is all web-based except. So all you need, if you want to put it in your course, you can link it into your course just with a regular URL, or in most platforms, some parts of eCollege, most Moodle, most areas of Moodle, most of the areas of Blackboard, you can just embed it directly into the discussion board, the content modules, and so forth, which is what we have done over here.
So because it's non-linear, then students then get to decide in which order to follow the path and all of that?
They may. You can set up a pathway that takes you from here to here to here. Again, being careful of the motion area. Or the students can just choose where they want to go on the canvas and click in, and it zooms in just like Google Earth, as Karen was saying. It just zooms in like that. The other thing that you can do with Prezi is download it as a PDF file, so that if you want to be able to get to it when you don't have internet connection, or you want to put the physical file for some reason directly in your Blackboard environment, you can just go ahead and do that, and it works out just fine as well. In fact, I wondered how the the PDF file would work, and it turns out that it does a reasonable job of replicating the Prezi in the PDF format. It's not quite as interactive.
How do you play the
of
YouTube
course.
videos in it?
I'm sorry?
How do you play the YouTube videos on it?
Same way.
They still play.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, in the PDF file. Yeah. No, I'm a little slow, but other times I'm not as quick.
Can you use Camtasia or something to do voiceover with it?
I would imagine you can use any screen capture. Well,
Yeah, you could set up
screencast
Camtasia
program
and
like
just
Jing.
narrate it.
Yeah.
The other thing
Have it play.
I've seen people upload their, I'm not sure if it works, but you could try uploading it to VoiceThread, which you can do with a PowerPoint, and then you can add narration, and then have other people narrate right on top of the VoiceThread.
Oh, that would be a good idea.
That's great.
Because it will import web URLs right into
Yeah.
into the VoiceThread, and then you can actually have a threaded discussion with all of that. That would be a good idea as well. So yeah, it's still downloading. But you can see that the tool itself is pretty straightforward. Just insert whatever you want to insert. These little bits that you put around, like this one right here, I don't know if it'll zoom while it's downloading. You use the zebra to enlarge or shrink. You can turn it with the zebra. You can drag it around, move it somewhere else. And I just show you really quickly here. What you have are these little brackets, and you set those up in various colors, make them darker, make them lighter, so that you've got on the big canvas, you have some frames that kind of say, all right, look at this content here in order to focus people's attention. Here's your pathway tool, and you can change your colors and fonts, of course, to whatever you want to do. Go back here to the tool, set your pathway up, and you can see here on this presentation, pathway that I have set up started right here in the middle with presentations without PowerPoint, went down to this slide, and you across the bottom, it has a little capture of each one of the areas where I have placed a point so that you can see the overall presentation if you want to. This is in the edit mode. During your presentation, nobody would be able to see this. They wouldn't see the pathway at all. That all disappears. But then when you click the forward button, then it goes ahead and just follows that pathway. And that's really all there is to Prezi. Yeah.
When you've established a pathway like this, if during your presentation you want to divert to another place, are you able to get off of the pathway?
To another place within Prezi?
Right. Like say somebody brings up a content and you go, oh, that relates to this point 27, but I'm only at point 5 right now.
Then you just zoom out. And because I'm doing multiple things over the internet, it's a little slow, but it just zooms out and you can see, is this your picture right here? Right here?
That is
cute.
Who's that?
I'm not in edit mode right now, but we'll drag that around. And you can just then zoom in to whichever part that you want to go to and be able to review that, skip ahead if you want to, whatever. In fact, you noticed that Patty did that last night. If you were at the presentation, you saw that she eventually realized that she had more content than time, and so she skipped ahead to a couple of, I think to her findings slides when she was talking about the project, the community project, and she skipped some of the details and moved ahead just by doing exactly this. Zoom out to the big canvas, find the point where she wanted to go, and just zip in onto that findings portion of the canvas, and it was good to go. So, with those two ideas in mind, the Prezi is a good alternative presentation format. It's web-based, so it's out there whenever you need it, as long as you can get an internet connection, and or you can download it as a PDF file. Embed things in it. The one thing that I will say that's been difficult is that hyperlinks, actual URLs, raw URLs, seem to be problematic in Prezi. I've not found those to be, and maybe it's just a problem I haven't solved. They can be put in there, but they're hinky. I know that they're continually working on these kinds of things. So with that, I thought, there's a tool, and that's really all there is to it. It's a zooming tool. You zoom in, you zoom out. Let's go back and move Greg's picture. Bring up the zebra. Let's put it...
How did you bring up that zebra?
I clicked on it. You have to be in edit mode rather than the presentation mode. And just like you would go in the slideshow in PowerPoint, but it's just the edit mode or the presentation mode. And if I want to make it bigger, I can make it bigger. If I want to make it smaller, I can make it smaller. I can drag it around if I want to see more of the canvas. Oops, zoom out. And let's say I want to put this over here, and I want to drag this around a little bit, and just kind of keep my half circle.
I do like how you kept everything so tight. Like your elements are so close together.
Yeah. And you can see, I have liked, this is my personal preference, I don't know that this is a design thing, but I have liked to be able, if I'm zoomed in on this, this architectural drawing, I like in the presentation mode to be able to see a corner of this and this, so it gives a visual point of reference where you are in the presentation. You don't need to see the whole thing, but you just see that corner. It's like a jigsaw puzzle, and oh, okay, here's the guy's nose, and that connects with the eye pieces and so forth. And then we want to add that to the pathway. So my last pathway is here. Let's drag this over like that. Take that down there, and now my pathway is changed. And you see what it did with the slide. It just moved them into the order so that I can see a visual of each a little more close up. And that's all there is to it. Move back out here. go to show, it's down here.
Can it do, I think we brought this up before, can it do voiceover? So that you don't even have to speak at all, it runs by itself? Like a...
Oh, you can set it so that
like
it just
a
runs. You can do an auto run so that it just goes through. There's no way to do a voice annotation on it at present, unless they've added it in the last week or so. There's no way that I know of. Gentlemen, any?
I'm looking right now.
Okay. No way that I know of to add voice on it. So what I would do if I wanted to add voice and just set it up maybe in my classroom would be to either create a YouTube of me speaking, using my webcam, or do a podcast and upload that to something like Podbean or Podcast Machine or iTunes, and just have the link to that so that it could be played within the presentation.
So in other words, they would have to, you would first have to open the podcast running and then run this simultaneously.
Yeah, they don't yet have the embed features all the way built in. You can embed YouTube videos, but you can't embed all kinds of content. I know they're working on that, like you could with a VoiceThread for the most part. I know that they're working on that. So you would have to have the podcast site up and running on one of your tabs. It would open automatically when you click the link, so it wouldn't be, it's just player would not be embedded here.
It's really hard. Basically what Prezi's saying, because it's Flash, you have to take Flash videos and call it, the sound files are in a FLV format, Flash video. You have to convert it to SWF. It's just,
it's a hassle.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's not that it's impossible, but it's difficult. So I usually think of, all right, what's a workaround that's suitable? Put it in Podcast Machine, click the link, and it comes up in a separate browser, and you're good to go, and you've got the annotation.
Yeah, you have to ultimately ask yourself,
Yeah.
What's the purpose?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want to do? If you want something, a visual that your students will look at and you're talking over, there's other tools.
Or you can do just what he's doing right now. We have QuickTime playing and recording everything that we're saying while the video's playing.
So it's, there are workarounds, but that goes back to those design principles too. How do I set it up, and what do I need for the audience to attend to? Where does their attention belong? And then what tool is most appropriate for that particular audience and that design that I want to use to convey the information. So if we go back here, no worries. Some of the ideas that I came up with are design and don't decorate. I always go back to my 8th graders, because for years I learned so much from watching 8th graders. We have the myth of the digital native. Well, that's a load of garbage. And if you're a fan of Mark Frensky, I'm sorry, but it's a load of garbage. They're a little fearless for the most part, but they don't know how to use most of the tools, to be honest. We have to teach them. We're instructional natives. That's our job, to teach kids how to do the things that we need them to do. And sometimes that means finding other resources, because we can't possibly know everything either. That's why we're doing this cool tools session, so that we can share some of the ideas and know that there are going to be others out there that always are going to come up. But one of the things I found with 8th graders was, with my 8th graders, I've sometimes seen that with the teacher presentations as well, is that they put all of the text together, all of their message together, and then they go through and decorate. And they'll put in, random clip art here and all of that kind of stuff. But with the idea of designing and not decorating, if we talk about that, then what we want to think about is, how do I convey the message as a whole, and design the elements that need to be designed, rather than just putting all the text, popping it in like that slide I showed you, with all of that text just packed into it. And I will say, for that was one of my graduate students who did that, and it was for an assignment that I didn't design. It's something that the university wants, and the prompt for the assignment was actually so poorly written that it encouraged the students to do exactly what she did. They had to get all that content in a certain number of slides, and it had to be done in such a way that they couldn't do voiceovers. It just had to be send the email or the PowerPoint to a portfolio site. They don't use TaskStream. Most of you probably know TaskStream. You just have to upload it. So they had to get all of the stuff on the slide. So it wasn't the student's particular fault that slide was so badly designed. Who is the audience? What is it we want the audience to attend to? And what are the strengths and limitations of the tools available? And so I thought, what are the uses of the tool? And how do we assess the use of the tool? One of the things that I continually think about is when I see people designing presentations, particularly students, is that it follows that mode of input, 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 and then we make a PowerPoint. And how do we design presentations in such a way that they convey meaningful information? How do we know that students aren't just grabbing, whether they're graduate students or 8th graders or whatever they happen to be, that they're not just grabbing images off of Google search and random images plopped into place? How do we use the visual elements, the textual elements, the voice elements where that's appropriate in order to convey information in a useful way? So what do you think of this tool? And I think maybe now, maybe you would have more to say and more ideas, and I can talk a little less. I know it's early, and there's not enough coffee around out here in the presentation rooms.
I kind of like it. I liked your, because at first I was like, oh, it's Prezi, you know, and
Yeah.
you really highlighted, I love the idea of assessing the nonlinear, and I think the first step that we see with teachers using technology is they just use the technology to showcase learning instead of using technology for learning.
Right.
And I think the design, it goes back to that classic rule, like what you started with. If you can print out your PowerPoint and people can follow along, you're doing something wrong. Like, you shouldn't. Why would you then don't do a PowerPoint? Give them a handout. So I really like that point.
Yeah. Yeah, or stick it in your course management system and then do something else. Yeah.
I agree, but I have to disagree also, because I think when we're talking about working with kids especially, not talking about graduate students, you're talking about a population that may not be able to follow along, or may not be able to remember what it is that you're showing, or retain the information. And you may make it available digitally as an audio file. That's not really going to help some students, and some students need to hear it, and they need to see it, and they need to take it home.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's not every student, but there are students that really need that. So while I